My group is Bank Rip-Offs Support Group, and I've got another one which is ANZ Unhappy Customers. It's for people with serious grievances, and one of the issues that I want to bring up is the issue of liar loans. UBS did some research recently, and it was published in all the media about liar loans. And I've got a chart here. Obviously you can't see it, but maybe some people can see it. The liar loans for ANZ Bank is at 42% for 2018, and the liar loan rate for 2017 was 45% as well. Now that's where income has been inflated on the loan application forms. So when the figures get inputted into the systems, it's been inflated by very often hundreds of percent. So in my case, the income was inflated by 400% above the tax returns that I supplied. And I've heard of other cases where it's 600%. And this goes across the banking industry. UBS says that understating of expenses is more like 75%. On Channel 9, where they've run stories about the banks forging loan application forms and inflating income, reducing expenses, reducing liabilities, increasing assets, sometimes also forging signatures. The criminologist Denise Brayley from WA says that she's collected 2,000 copies of loan application forms where the customers have found that the banks have forged income, expenses, etc. She says that this is systemic at the banks, and that the banks in the good old days trained the staff to make these alterations.
That's quite an allegation.
So
Mr. Herman, the question you're asking...
Okay, so the LF Economics submitted 1,200 of these loan application forms where there was forgery done by the banks on the loan application forms to the Senate Enquiry into white-collar crime. ASIC did nothing, so I would say that political donations do work, but I believe that it...
Mr. Herman, that's a real slight on ASIC to say nothing of us.
Well, the Royal Commission certainly made that slight as well.
So you're asking the question, what's our position on it? Could we just tell you what the situation is?
So, just for... So the issue around liar loans, I think with respect, you put a lot of terms together with that. I think is probably very misleading to people here. The liar loans review that you're talking about from UBS was a survey done by UBS. It's not a government survey or a regulator survey. It was done about 1,000 people out of the entire country. The liar loans that they're referring to are not where banks have changed data. It was where the applicants, either the person borrowing the money or their broker, had falsified data points, in many cases their household expenses. That is what is referred to as a liar loan, not that the bank makes any changes. Now, what do we do? And there is an issue there. There is an issue. We don't think it's that widespread. What we do, we don't just rely on what applicants tell us in their forms about their income or their expenses. So on their income, we need to see proof. That's why we ask for pay slips, and we look at their bank accounts. On their expenses today, we need access to people's bank accounts so that we can verify. We literally have people, when you make a loan application, that go through and said, how much are you paying for rent, how much are you paying for school fees, how much are you paying to go out for dinner or whatever it might be, and we tally those things up. And then finally, we check that data against an index that is put out by University in Melbourne that says, hey, a couple with 2 kids who earn $85,000 a year probably have expenses of X, and so we check against those. So we do a lot of checks and balances to ensure that we're not fully reliant on people, because we also know that many of those so-called liar loans, people just make mistakes. It's very hard for many people to recall exactly what their monthly expenses are in making an application. So I can assure you we have a very robust process, a whole series of controls, and we build in a lot of buffers to ensure that we are making responsible loans to our customers.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
I would hope so, but I guess that I would ask you also about the 1,200 loan application forms that were forged, that were submitted to the Senate Enquiry into white-collar crime. I spoke to Denise Brayley, and she said that she's got many hundreds of ANZ Bank loan application forms that have been forged.
Well, we don't know about that. If she wishes to get in touch with us, we'd be very pleased to look at that.
Yeah.
Unless you have any further questions, there are a lot of questions.
I do. Where that's the case, fraud would invalidate the loan contracts. And, you know, I guess I'm also concerned about ANZ Bank, you know, the stability of the bank and the stability of the whole banking industry. We've had, you know, a really strong run with property, and but now household debt is very high, 120% of GDP, and, you know, the stability of ANZ Bank with the possibility of a severe downturn, especially something like a global financial crisis, where properties, the last global financial crisis, property values fell by 42% in America.
But can I
answer that? I think I understand the nature of your question. Again, just to reassure shareholders, the reality is that the average home loan customer of ANZ today, the loan versus their house is at around 50% of the value of their home. And so that we, as a bank, we're very, very well secured in terms of the home. We also know that something like 76% of all of our home loan customers, and there's about 1 million of them, 76% of them are ahead on their repayments. So not only are they meeting their monthly requirements, they're ahead. And they're not just ahead a week or so, they're actually ahead in many cases many, many months. And so that is a very strong indicator that affordability and people are able to meet their debts and are comfortably positioned. You know, our risk appetite on housing is very conservative. As a bank, we're one of the more conservative in the marketplace. We have less of our balance sheet, or your balance sheet as shareholders, committed to home loans versus our peer group. And we're very strict in terms of our security measures and making sure that people can comfortably afford their repayments.
And Shayne, it's also true we do stress testing,
yes,
both as required by APRA but on our own volition for the thing. So I really believe, Mr. Herman, on that particular point, we should be able to reassure you.
Okay, look, that's fine, but I have reported fraud to Mr. Elliott's office, okay, and I know a number of other people who've done that too, and, you know, I got a fob-off letter, so that's actually covering up.
No, I think that's quite an allegation too. I have absolutely no doubts that if the CEO office gets an allegation from you or from anybody else, they will look at it, they will make sure that it's looked at, and if there's no foundation to it, well, it's one way. If there is foundation, we would act on it, because your suggestion is in our favour. The fraud is being committed either by people to us or by people within our own organisation. Either way, I should assure the shareholders we want to clean that up. I think we should move on. We have a lot of questioners wanting to still question.
Okay, look, obviously that it's evident from this meeting that a lot of former bank customers, ANZ Bank customers, feel that they've been unfairly treated. And, you know, from my point of view, in my case, you know, I've had to up the ante, and a lot of us here have. So, you know, I had to resort to protest. So, Mr. Elliott, you're under arrest, and I've got the evidence.
Oh, well, that's a dramatic turn. Thank you.
Hello, Bank Warriors. We've just finished the ANZ AGM. We've stood out and got ready to meet all the directors coming out. They locked the doors, shunted the directors off, sent them down to the cab rank and they've disappeared. Paul and I are racing around the building to try and find them, but this is actually part of the responsibilities of the directors. Not happy.